Hi, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the Writers Workshop, part of our Marketing Business Development Network. We've had two sessions so far teaching you about and sharing the difference between public relations and marketing, and sharing how to contact news media and how to get your message out there, and how to write it up so that it's able to be used. I'm really excited today to be able to bring you two of my mentors in spreading the credit union story, because it's all well and good to know how to write the press release, but you've got to know what to write about and what's going to catch some people's interest. So today I want to introduce you to our two guests. Today we have Richard Dines, and he is the Senior Director with Business Development with Credit Union Awareness, which is a subsidiary of the Credit Union National Association. Now, Richard works with credit unions and state credit union leagues and ensures funding for a national digital campaign to increase awareness and consumer consideration for credit unions. He's been with CUNA since 2009, and I've known him all that time. He's a great guy, but he has served in so many roles. He's done engagement, which is maintaining relationships and creating opportunities for credit union leagues. He's worked in league relations, supporting the state credit union leagues. And before he even came to CUNA, he worked in the National Cooperative Business Association and the National Cooperative Bank. With a law degree from the University of California, the Hastings College of the Law, and a master's in city planning from the University of North Carolina, and he's completed undergraduate studies at the University of Michigan. Now, I'm in Delaware, as some of you know, so Richard is not far from me. He's in Arlington, Virginia, with his wife and two daughters. So welcome, Richard.
Thank you
Now,
very much.
our other guest that we have with us today, I've probably known for like about 20 years or so. We were just talking back in my old credit union days and Sterling's previous life. Sterling Nokwa. Now, he is the engagement consultant with the Credit Union National Association. He works as a relationship manager with credit unions and leagues from the Northeast, all the way from Maryland and DC up to Maine. So you may have seen him in your area. He's worked with CUNA since 2018, but before going into CUNA, he was a sales executive with the CUNA Mutual Group for 27 years. And he's completed undergraduate studies at Westminster College, where he lettered in football, swimming, and tennis. Again, he's kind of down here in my area. He's in River Edge, New Jersey, with his wife and two sons. And welcome, Sterling.
Thank
We're so
you.
glad to have you guys here to be able to share, your experiences and your deep knowledge of how and what people are missing with credit unions out there, and how to tell it to us. But before we get started, I have an extra special surprise for everybody attending. We invited Lauren Williams from Credit Union CUNA to come and share some information with us too. Now, she unfortunately couldn't join us, but she was gracious enough to provide a video for us to watch, a short video. Lauren, she's a natural born storyteller, and she has a very deep understanding media landscape. She got 10 years experience in communications field, and her professional history goes across many industries, including financial services, technology, and entertainment. She's perfect for making a video. Lauren currently is serving as a media relations strategy manager at CUNA, and her ability to build and maintain relationships with reporters has given her success with client placements in CNBC, MSNBC, The Wall Street Journal, Politico, USA Today, and many, many more. Lauren had received a Bachelor of Arts in Public Relations and Advertising from Penn State, minored in sociology, and received a journalism certificate from the John Curley Center for Sports Journalism. So we're going to go right into watch Lauren's video. It's a short video. We'll watch that real quickly, and then we'll come back and join our discussion with Richard and Sterling. So Walter, roll the video.
Hello, everyone at the Cooperative Credit Union Association. My name is Lauren Williams. I'm the Media Relations Strategy Manager here at CUNA, and I'm really excited to be here with you all today as part of your Writers Workshop to talk about storytelling and public relations. Here is just a simple three-part formula to why public relations is valuable. We're all here because we really want to share the news of the credit union difference. We want to talk about why credit unions are so unique. And we do this through public relations by increasing the awareness and visibility of credit unions. We want more people to know about credit unions and the benefits that they offer. We do this also by raising the profile of credit union leaders. So we want to see our credit union leaders quoted. We want to see them on panels. We want to see them penning op-eds. And we also want to promote the products and services that credit unions offer. Why? Because they are so different than those at banks. They are member focused, member minded, and then this is the formula to how we effectively tell the story of the credit union difference. Now, I understand that a lot of you are marketing professionals, so I thought it would be good just to talk about two differences between public relations and marketing. So with PR, what we're able to do is have that third-party validation. A lot of consumers, they go to their favorite website or their favorite news outlet, newspaper, podcast, radio station. They all have their preferences. Instead of us putting those messages out there on our own, we're able to use that third-party validator. We're able to lean on the news sources that they already depend on to get the credit union message out there. The second thing is that public relations really has the power to persuade, while marketing, we would say, has the power to sell. Our goal in public relations is to change minds. We want to keep the positive messages positive, and if there's ever a negative message, we want to make sure that we're turning that around. But I would say, while we have these two differences, we have a lot in common also. We have that shared goal of just really wanting to promote the products and initiatives while maintaining that brand reputation. I know you all are already learning about press releases, but these are just 4 quick things that you all should keep in mind. These are 2 questions that every press release has to answer. Why will the audience care about this story? Is this story relevant to my target audience? Who is the target audience? These are things we need to keep in mind. Keep it short. Limit your press releases to 1 page, I should say, and then make sure you're using active instead of passive voice. I would recommend the elements of style for that writing guidance, which will really help. Think about headlines. So what's the subject line that's really going to grab a reporter's attention? Read it in a way and write it in a way that is very similar to news headlines. And then the last one, make sure you put the right executives and quote the right executives that you want to get the message across. For some cases, it might be your president and CEO, it might be your marketing manager, it might be a lending officer, or it might be a credit union CEO. It's really important to identify those right voices. Next is pitching. At CUNA, we have been doing quite a bit by way of pitching, and it's really helped us get that credit union story out there. Make sure we're giving reporters useful information, know their beat, make sure that they might be interested in what you're sending them. Determine 10 outlets that you really want to give your attention to and you want to foster those relationships with. Reach out, provide everything up front because reporters have minimal time. Give them the assets they need. Give them the story angle that you have in your mind. That really helps them do half the job. And then follow up. Do a quick phone call or even via email, but just try to make it a little bit different than the first communication or email that you sent out. These are just some pointers that you all can keep in mind. Messaging. So knowing your clients, who are your clients, right? At CCUA, your clients are the organization, CCUA and your member credit unions, their CEOs, their leaderships. Whenever you're doing an interview with them, make sure that you staff it, provide them with talking points. That really gives them a white glove service. Make sure you're cross-promoting on CCUA channels, on your member credit union channels, social media, share the news. Thought leadership. So it's really great to use those internal voices and have them use their voices, use their channels, use their LinkedIn, use the CCUA page, use your member credit union pages to really get their voices out there. And it also is good practice, I would say, for interviews as well. So this is just another quick tidbit on relationship building, which I think is really at the core of media pitching. Relationships with reporters are always mutually beneficial. We're giving them something because we want them to give us something in return. But we want to keep in mind their needs. How is this credit union story going to help them inform their readers? These are just some really brief ways that you can engage and kind of cold call, if you will, or cold email reporters that you may not have a relationship with. It's always helpful to ask questions, compliment a story that they've done, or perhaps give them an exclusive on a news story that you are thinking about, let's say a week in advance. So just things to keep in mind as you're building new relationships with reporters. I'm not going to fully go over this slide, but I want you just to take a quick look. These are just 4 ways that credit unions are already telling their stories. Credit unions are solving problems. They have inspiration behind why they do what they do. They're not-for-profit cooperatives. Credit unions are different. They're different from other financial institutions. And there are tons of member stories out there that we can share to tell the credit union story. These are just 2 examples of stories that we've been able to place recently that really talk about the credit union difference. The CNBC story was really great because we were able to work with leagues to identify member credit unions who then identified credit union members who were able to tell their story about how their local credit union helped them during their time of need during COVID-19. And the money story, again, another just great headline that really shows that credit union difference. Multi-channel distribution. So we want to make sure that when we get the earned media, that we're sharing it across, or as we target earned media, that we keep our other channels in mind. Social media, sharing on social media, adding a reporter, engaging with them on social media, publicizing the news on your internal channels. And I want to briefly talk about advocacy. What are the newspapers that your congressional offices are reading? It would probably mean a great deal to see those local credit unions in those publications. So it's important to always keep advocacy in mind, keep your internal audience in mind, and keep social media in mind throughout your public relations efforts. You might have heard about advancing communities, but we're excited about this initiative because it's our grassroots initiative. We are working with states across the country to help tell those stories. We are aggregating member stories on the Advancing Communities website. And there are tons of Massachusetts stories and Massachusetts data available on the Advancing Communities website, which you all can use in your storytelling abilities. So make sure you check out this resource and definitely leverage it to your advantage as you're engaging with reporters. And that concludes my presentation. I thank you all so much for having me. I'm happy to share this presentation with you or dive a little bit deeper. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us here at CUNA. I have to leave you with this quote by Bill Gates. And he said, if I had $1 left, I'd spend it on PR. That's not to say that marketing isn't great, but that's just to say that PR is powerful, PR is persuasive, PR is storytelling. So it's just something to keep in mind that what you're doing is not in vain. And all the work, I think, it will be for a good cause, and it will be to further the credit union difference. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Wow, that was really powerful. And Lauren really brought up a couple of good points. And Sterling and Richard, I think we can use your expertise in taking a little bit deeper dive into some of the things that she talked about. I know one of the things that I noticed in a presentation was sharing out the good that the credit unions have done. So, Richard, I want to start with you first and have your take on sharing out that importance.
hmm So yeah, it's so important for credit unions to be able to communicate to their members and to potential members and to policymakers and to the public at large the great benefits that they're delivering to members because telling the credit union story is so important for so many different reasons. One is it helps get new members to the credit union. Another is that it builds loyalty with members of the credit union. And then finally, it's critical for advocacy. Telling the credit union story and showing the tangible benefits that the credit union is providing to its members. That's such an important step to being able to convince policymakers that that policies should be designed to not only not hurt credit unions, but to even benefit credit unions. And that's what the awareness campaign is all about as well. And I can go into more about that later.
Okay, great. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I know in working with legislators throughout my years, they like the statistics. Don't get me wrong, but they love hearing how it impacted that one person. They love to be able to take that back into their into the discussions that they have with their peers, and say, "Hey, look, this bill or this really helped out this one little business member who couldn't get a loan anywhere else but could get it from his credit union." So, Sterling, how does that kind of help advance us nationally as well?
Yeah, it really does. It's so critical right now because with all the stimulus packages, we're a little concerned that they're going to be looking for ways to find taxes, find ways of recovering that money. And if we can't tell our story, then the legislators, the folks in DC, they won't care. They'll be like, credit unions, you're just like any other financial institution. So we need to get our story out there. We need to let them know how we're different from banks and how we're different from other financial institutions. And now more than ever, it's critical for us to do this and get our name out there.
I know, it's been an ongoing almost every year. You kind of see like a little resurgence. I want to call it when banks attack. Like the Fox network thing there. But it's kind of like they just want, they have so much, but they just want our little piece as well, and they just keep going at it every year, and we have to keep redefending ourselves every year. So it is critical, to get the stories out there. um, Sharing individual member stories. Richard, how do you suggest that the credit unions go about tapping the members for those?
Well, it's interesting. I see in the chat a question about using Facebook and Twitter, and absolutely, credit unions should be active on social media, and that's one way, certainly, to share. How credit unions are directly benefiting members. So, highlighting how a particular member was. Was benefited by what the credit union did for him or her. That's a perfect way to build goodwill, to show how credit unions, what they're doing is directly having a positive impact on their communities, on their members, and of course, when a credit union does something good for its members, that benefits the entire community. That puts pressure on other financial institutions to provide better service and better products. It affects how small businesses can function and can operate well in the community. And credit unions, because of their nonprofit cooperative nature, their very purpose is to help members and to give members a leg up, and when credit unions can show how the members benefit, they highlight the unique nature of the credit union, how the structure is different from other financial institutions. So it's not to say that other financial institutions aren't providing something good for their customers, but when you can show how members benefit from the way the credit union operates, you can highlight the particular unique structure of the credit union, of the cooperative, to show how credit unions really should be given policy leeway, even preferences in when policies are being developed.
That's very true. And it's kind of like that, a rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. If you can help out, one or two people here and there, then it's going to spread through the community, like you said, Richard, and the whole community will benefit from that. Which kind of brings us, Sterling, that one of the focuses for CUNA this year is financial well-being for all. So I know credit unions, we kind of like do the financial education classes and things like that. But I think there's a little more to it than just giving them some resources. Don't you agree, Sterling?
I do. And, you probably have heard our president and CEO, Jim Nussle, talk a lot about this financial well being for all. And that's what credit unions are all about. And we need to let the folks in DC know that what we're doing for our members is different. And I see in the chat there that there was somebody who asked about, well, don't you think that we're bragging? Yeah, but I think we should brag. I think we should tell our story and say how we're different than banks and other financial institutions. And it's very critical. There's a statistic out there that 40%, over 40% of Americans have less than $400 in their savings. And how do we move that needle? And then how do we go to the legislators and tell them, look, here's what credit unions are doing right now to move that needle. And I think that's what financial well-being for all is all about. And you'll hear Jim Nussle talk about that at length.
Yeah, that's very true. And I mean, I know that during the last year, especially, credit unions stepped up in so many different ways, to help their members and in their community as well. Between, taking sandwiches to the police and the other first responders, um, and, just being open in general, just being open when a lot of businesses had to close. Our credit union staff, actually, they risked everything to be there for the members. And I think that even as we're like starting to, I don't want to really be too optimistic and say come out of this, but as things are starting to kind of take a tide, I think it's still important to share what was done over the past year as well. And again, the value in that public relations. Richard, can you put a price tag on something like that?
No, you really can't. I mean, credit unions have so much going for them in terms of what we do every day, and I think there was a comment in the chat about earned media. Essentially, you don't really have to. Pay for the kind of media that credit unions can earn when you just put out press releases about all the great benefits you're providing. And you mentioned, Carol, the great good that credit unions have been providing the communities over the past year. PPP loans are another great example of how many credit unions stepped up to help small businesses in their communities. And, I work for the subsidiary of CUNA that runs this national brand awareness campaign for credit unions. And what we've seen over decades now is that credit unions' market share has just really been stagnant. And I think when we can talk about credit unions and let everyone know the great good that credit unions are providing to their members, to their communities, I think we can attract some of these younger consumers out there that really don't know much about credit unions. And we can try to make sure not only that credit unions are going to be there in the future, but that we can be an even stronger financial partner for consumers in the future.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And speaking of the younger consumer, I know a lot of people now are kind of like using their wallet, so to speak, and to vote with their social conscience as well. And I know that they want to see good being done in the world. They want to see that what they're supporting is doing good. And I think that if we can impress upon them all of the good that credit unions do, we align so well with those social values. It's almost like a no-brainer for them. But again, like you said, Richard, we got to get them to know about it. Got to get them to know about it out there. So even as we go ahead and we're sharing and one credit union maybe just like sharing, it moves the needle really slowly. I understand that. Um, but if everyone is sharing across the nation, is it just because there's so few credit unions that it's hard to get that awareness level to move up a notch or two?
Well,
Go ahead,
Sterling.
Richard.
I was just going to say, it's not the numbers of credit unions, because we certainly have pretty good numbers in terms of the number of credit unions out there, the number of members that we serve. What is it now? Over 120 million Americans, or 120 million memberships. But our market share has been stagnant for so many years, primarily because there are these myths out there, these misperceptions that consumers have about credit unions. One is a lot of younger consumers don't think they can join a credit union. There's this idea, this historical artifact, that so many credit unions are exclusive, that they only serve a limited field of membership. Well, we know that today credit unions generally serve many different select employee groups or geographical areas, communities, and that anyone who lives, works, or worships in a community can join the credit union. So there really is a credit union for everyone. And another misperception out there is that credit unions are kind of small mom and pop shops, and that they can't provide the same level of service that a bank or one of these new fintechs can. And we also know that's not the case, that credit unions really have the same technological capabilities as any other financial institution. So we need to get the word out, especially to younger consumers, that they can join, that there's a credit union for everyone, and that we can serve them just as well as any bank can.
Sterling, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add to that too. And Richard, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when we did our survey before the awareness campaign, we thought we were going to hear a lot of folks say, a lot of consumers say, "I don't even know what a credit union is," or "Yeah, I think I think it's part of a union." Because we've heard that in the past. But actually, Richard, the majority of them knew what a credit union was.
Right,
but
right.
They just felt like they couldn't join. And the main reasons were what Richard had already given.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we want to open their eyes. We want to open your eyes to a credit union.
Right.
Yeah, right.
I did want to, Carol, if you don't mind, I did want to address one on the chat about CRA. That's a really good question. How does telling the credit union story give credit unions a one-up when it comes to CRA? Well, you know what? We've been a part of CRA forever. I mean, what credit unions do in our communities is we serve, and a lot of times we serve the underserved.
That's right.
And banks don't do that. So, and I know that's been a big thing especially with Senator Warren, and but I'm we're already doing that. We've been doing that for years. Credit unions have been doing that for years. So that's where I think we're one up on banks as far as that's concerned.
And I find it interesting that, like you said, Sterling, it's kind of in our DNA. It's what we do, but the banks have to be like told to do it, and
Right.
they have to prove that they're doing it, whereas we just do it naturally, and there you go. I think that's an interesting point or counterpoint to their bank attacks.
Right.
In
Yeah,
my
I was
opinion,
just
anyway. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I mean, the CRA legislation was created back in the 70s because banks weren't reinvesting in their communities, and credit unions, by their very structure, by the way that they're made, are there to reinvest in their members. That's what we're all about. And so we need to shout that from the rooftops. We need to make sure everybody knows we're different. Credit unions are not-for-profit cooperatives established to reinvest in our members. You belong here.
So I think that when credit unions share out, some of the things that they do for and in their community, I think that really kind of underscores that relationship that they have that unique relationship that they have with their communities. It's not always about, supporting the biggest check going to here or going to there. I think sometimes the smaller supporting that credit unions do, it makes a big difference, to the smaller organizations in their communities and the local communities. It's kind of like that saying that you see sometimes when you go to the beach, and they're kind of like, well, if you pick up a starfish and you throw it back in the ocean, you're not going to make that big of a difference. But for that starfish, you've made a world of difference. So I think that credit unions kind of work in that respect, myself. Cooperative. A lot of people don't really understand that word. And
Mhm.
there's kind of a negative. They kind of think like, oh, well, it's like everybody just pulls everything in and I lose my individuality or something like that. So, Sterling, let's hit you for the cooperative side of it. How do you feel? Is there a negative connotation in your mind, or is it, everybody's good
Well,
with cooperative?
yeah, I think some people think negatively, uh, you know, regarding cooperative, but I don't. And cooperative to me means no stockholders. And listen, the banks, they have to answer to their stockholders, not to their customers.
Mhm.
And we have to answer to our members, and that's what a cooperative is all about. Now, if somebody says, well, the name, well, let's change the name then. We don't have to be known as a cooperative. I mean, but cooperative always has meant to me that we're not a stock company. We're not answering to our stockholders.
Yeah, and I would
True.
say,
And I think,
you know, oh, oh, sorry, Carol.
go ahead, go ahead. No, go
I
ahead,
was just
Richard.
going to say, I don't think there's necessarily a negative connotation, but there certainly is some confusion about the word cooperative. And I think, if you're in New York City, usually where you've heard of the term cooperative is in a housing context, and it means an apartment building. Or when you're in the rural parts of the country, especially in the Midwest, when you hear cooperative, you think of a farmer cooperative or a rural electric cooperative. So I think when credit unions can make that connection and make sure that people know that they're in fact cooperatives, I think that's going to be a positive thing, and that it helps connect credit unions to these other types of businesses that are indeed established for their members, for the benefit of their members. And that's what credit unions are all about. I think it's more of an education thing, just getting over that confusion over what that term means. And I think, it's easy to say that, credit unions are by you and for you, and they're all about you, the member.
That's very true. I know. I mean, I'm not out in the Midwest, but my electric company is a cooperative right here in
Mhm.
Delaware. So
Right.
there you go. It's like, yeah, we belong to that cooperative, no problem at all. And I think another big difference between the credit unions and the banks on that cooperative nature is credit unions don't mind helping each other out. If you've got a good idea about something, how to share, that you've done something good for a member, well, we've done the same kind of thing for members, so okay, we're going to put it out there too. So I think credit unions like to share in that knowledge and expertise as well. And plus, a lot of credit unions don't mind um, assisting a brother or sister credit union with advice,
Mhm.
technology advice, member advice. I know when up in believe it was up in Massachusetts during the COVID, one of the branches couldn't open because of the fact that their staff had unfortunately taken a turn.
Mm.
So a credit union down the street said, just send your members to us, and we'll help them out, while you're under this little time restraint here and you can't be open right now. I don't think that you would have seen that in a counterpart bank. I think they would have just been send them to us and we will open accounts for them. Is
Right.
basically what would have happened there. So I think the cooperative nature really resonates, with us. So getting back to telling this big story that we have, I know
And
Richard.
Carol, can I just add to that, to what you
Sure,
said?
sure.
So a couple of my roommates I had in college, they work for banks. And I told one of them, I said, well, they wanted to get together. And I said, no, that won't be a good weekend for me because I have a credit union chapter meeting. And they're like, what is a chapter meeting? I said, well, it's where credit unions get together and discuss things and work together. He goes, credit unions work together? Don't they compete with one another? I said, no, it's not banks, it's credit unions, and that's the biggest difference. So I just wanted to just kind of add that to what you were saying before.
And doesn't it just underscore that? I mean,
Yeah.
totally illustrates the point. Totally. So now when we'll get back to, telling out there and sharing out there the story. In Lauren's presentation, she shared like the screen where the Massachusetts credit unions were profiled. And I know that when the initiative first kind of started up, that we posted up some stories and things that we had collected for our newsletter just to get things kind of moving. But credit unions can go there and post stories themselves.
Yeah,
ahead.
Sterling, I was just going to say that I believe that's how it works at the Advancing Communities website. So part of that whole financial well-being for all initiative that CUNA and the state leagues are promoting, credit unions can share their own stories. I think at that website.
They can. And Carol, the other thing too is I have quite a few credit unions that share the stories with me, and then I just send them up to the folks at CUNA.
That's a great way to do
it.
Yeah.
And they can do that as well. I'm perfectly fine with that. It's actually great hearing some of the stories that some of the credit unions are doing right now. So it's great. And one of the things I'm looking at the chat here. How do we? We only have 6 to 7% of the deposits, and that's correct. But that's what we're doing right now. That's what CUNA and the leagues are really focused on right now is, the awareness that Richard does, and then the financial well-being. I would say the only thing that we need as far as financial well-being for all is we need a better way to kind of, have a way to measure. And so that we can tell our story and we can sell, because when we go to the legislators, you all know they're going to say, okay, financial well-being for all. Well, tell me what you're doing. And we can give them story after story after story, but then they're going to say, well, do you have any, information? Do you have any facts on what you're doing for each of these members? And we need a better way to kind of measure that. And I know that Jim has talked about this. I know, Richard, you've heard him talk about this plenty of times. And credit unions right now, we're working really closely with them in trying to figure this out on how we can track it and how we can let the folks in DC know what we're doing.
Right. And as marketing people, I mean, there's kind of like a step removed from the story, so to speak. So how would they go about knowing, like which of these members might have a story to tell and who would be willing to share their story? I know, a lot of times on their Facebook sites, members may leave a comment. So, do you think like reaching back out to that member and saying, hey, this is really great.
Yeah.
You want to share that, with the rest of the world kind of thing, and use that story and, go ahead and promote that through.
Yeah, I think certainly talking to your loan officers, talking to your tellers, I'm sure they've heard from members who have been positively impacted by something the credit union has done for them. That's probably the best way to find good member stories. And I want to go back to a point you made earlier, Carol, about credit unions working with each other, and because that is one of the cooperative principles that really distinguish credit unions from banks and from other types of financial institutions, is that credit unions work together. And in fact, the initiative I worked for, the Open Your Eyes to a Credit Union campaign, is only successful because credit unions work together to promote the campaign and to fund it. And I did want to note that we're up in 26 states now, including Rhode Island, and hoping to launch in even more states in the months and years ahead.
Very true. And the thing with the that being a nationwide initiative is that it does bring a level of awareness about credit unions in general. And then in their communities, the credit unions can further fine tune that message, so that way they can get it out there. So to learn
Yes.
more about Open Your Eyes,
Yeah, I
people
saw that question. So you can learn more about the campaign on the CUNA website. If you go to cuna.org/awareness, there's lots of information there about what we're doing with the campaign, how it's going. We've got over $50 million already raised toward the campaign, and there's a list of contributors on that website, as well as kind of an explanation of how the campaign works.
So that's a good resource too, because you're able to use the graphics and things like that from that website, from that campaign, and kind of coordinate them and customize them for your own credit union as well.
Yes, in fact, one of the things I did want to mention is one of the things that the campaign produced based on the research that we did a few years ago was a messaging guide. And that messaging guide is available to credit unions across the country, whether you're a contributor to the campaign or not. And so if anybody's interested in getting a copy of that messaging guide, that can help, kind of help you think about your marketing efforts and how to kind of craft them in a way that really appeals to consumers. You can email me at rdines@cuna.com. So I'm assuming, Carol, you'll share contact information for me and Sterling so that if folks want to get in contact with us, they can.
Oh yes, definitely. That, and this is again, this is being recorded as well, so they'll be able to go back and like pick up on something that they might have missed or wanted a little bit more information with too. Sterling, any kind of training out there from CUNA on like how to do a better job in telling stories?
Well, if you go to our website, there are just a lot of credit unions out there that have shared their stories. They can look at that and see what other credit unions are doing, and they can go from there. But like I said, one of the things that we got to do a better job of in our industry is just finding a way to measure and letting the folks in DC know how we're moving that needle. And the better that we can be at that, the better we're going to be in shape to continue with our tax status, with not as much regulation, going on down the line. But yeah, they can go to cuna.org, and there's a lot of information out there. If they need to, they can come to me as well. I'm your engagement consultant in the Northeast. So you can always, send me an email and say, hey, I don't know where to go to. And that's really my job. My job is to kind of be a single point of contact. So if you don't know who to go to at CUNA, you can always email me.
There you go. Now you have an in.
Yeah, one thing I'd add on to what Sterling was saying is the CUNA councils are a great resource. Mm-hmm. And if you're not already a member of the CUNA Marketing and Business Development Council, that is a terrific council to join with a wealth of resources, including white papers, conferences, and other training. So
that's very true. And again, in the spirit of cooperation, I know when I was a council member, I borrowed so many ideas from my fellow council members as well. Yeah. So it's a good resource in that respect. Now I know that we talked a little bit about financial well-being for all, and financial literacy plays such a big part in that. Because of COVID, I think a lot of credit unions shifted to online financial classes and things like that. Um, what's important? Is it more important to say that, or I guess it's all important, but that we're doing financial education? And again, for the measurement, Sterling, we need to like tell how many people attended, how many youth, how many adults, how many were, was it a home buyer class? We need to kind of give those statistics too, and then kind of maybe back that up with the story of, the young family who's just starting out with less than 400 in their savings account, as we said earlier,
Right.
and how you've helped them to be able to build that savings up, and now they've got their first car, and now they've got their first
Yeah.
mortgage, and how the credit union did that, but as part of those overall statistics, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good point, Carol. They, if we can have a way to measure, I've said it a few times now, and go to the folks in DC and let them know how we're moving the needle, that would be great. I think credit unions just continuing to share their story, just continuing to let the members know, here's how we're helping you. Here's how we're different than any other financial institution. And, because the legislators, they're going to look at us and they're going to say, well, how are you guys different? Okay, all right. So you say you're a cooperative and you don't have stockholders, but what are you really doing for your members? And I think that's the key right now.
And I think it's
I totally
important
agree
to
with
note.
you there.
I was just going to say it's important to note, and it's part of telling the credit union story, that because we're cooperatives, every member benefits when other members are doing better, because there's fewer delinquencies, there's more capital, in the credit union. So the financial education doesn't just benefit the person who's receiving the education, but everybody in the credit union really benefits when you've got more empowered and more educated members.
That's very true. And you can segment it down. I mean, you don't have to be like really broad if you want to talk about how you've helped. I know the CCUA is very actively involved in fighting senior abuse and frauds and things like
Mhm.
that. And we help our credit unions to educate their staff on how to recognize it and what to do about it, but we also go out and into the public and talk about senior fraud and how to protect themselves from scams and things like that too as well. So I think reporting that back and saying, look, that had a big impact. I know when the legislation was putting into place different kind of fraud things, and the fact that you're able to educate your staff on frauds, put a safe harbor so that if credit unions and banks too, but if they have this training, it gives them a safe harbor. Because we were able to share the stories about how our seniors and our elderly were being scammed out of billions of dollars, Congress opened their eyes and they paid attention and they gave that exemption. So that's just one example of how these stories can actually help impact the whole movement.
Absolutely. CCUA's leadership in preventing elder abuse is just another great example of how credit unions care. They care about their members, and again, by their very nature, by their very structure, they're set up in a different way to benefit the members that they serve and the communities that they serve.
Mhm.
Very true, very true. And we're offering still offering training through Bank Safe, which is a CUNA initiative in cooperation, again that word, with AARP. And I know a lot of states do offer, like an extra protection at a state level too, if people can, if a credit union can show that their staff have had the training, it's, one of the requirements in order for them to get the safe harbor. So it's important for credit unions to take advantage of that as well. So we're kind of closing up on the hour here. This has been a wonderful discussion. We've learned a lot about getting the credit union story out there. We've learned a lot of different ways that we can do it. When it comes back down to it, though, it's just a matter of sharing it. I mean, like Richard said and Sterling said, you all hear stories about how this loan helped that person, or this teller, went out to take something out, or not take something, but helped an elderly member who couldn't navigate her accounts or something like that. But we all know how we've made those impacts. But it's really time to start sharing those stories out there, and getting more awareness of the credit union difference out there. So let me go first to Richard for any kind of closing comments, thoughts.
Yeah, I would just say, credit unions have to tell the story of how we're benefiting members, because it helps get new members to come to the credit union. It helps us with advocacy to make sure that the laws are there to protect and to promote credit unions, and to make sure that people understand that credit unions are here not to make money off of you, but rather to make money for you. And that's a critical difference.
That's very true. Very true. Sterling.
That's a real good point, Richard. Yeah, I would just say, if anything, the pandemic, I believe, showed some of the younger folks on what credit unions can do. Richard mentioned it a while ago, that they didn't, there are some younger folks that just felt like credit unions didn't have the technology to help them. And boy, we just came to the table. We really did. Credit unions just did a phenomenal job during the pandemic. I think we proved ourselves, and we got to continue to tell that story. And I want my kids, when I'm gone, I want my kids to be able to say, "Hey, I'm in a credit union just like my old man was," and so I want us to continue.
Very, very true. Again, I cannot thank you, gentlemen, both enough for joining us today, and also Lauren for the marvelous video that she shared. I do want to remind our viewers that we are recording the session, and the session will be available shortly on the website. Directly underneath where you've been viewing it, there's a member-only portal. When you log into that portal, you'll see the recordings of the previous two sessions. This one will join it. And next week, we'll be closing out the session. I just want to make sure I get the day right here. August, July. With Walter Lascos, he's going to be sharing some ideas with you on thinking outside the box as far as events and reporting events and things that you can report on that will promote and further promote the credit union uniqueness and also the value into the community. So again, I know we're just a few minutes early on closing up here, but we just want to go ahead and thank everyone for their time. Again, thank you, gentlemen, both for joining us today. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure having you on the Writers Workshop today with us.
I want to thank you, Carol, and Walt, and the whole team at CCOA for being our partners and keeping the credit union movement strong.
Yeah, and it's been such a great partnership. We thank you. We really do.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll see everybody next week on the last session of the Writers Workshop. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.